Oh boy. Good morning. How y'all doing today? Good. So, like you said, my name is Chandler. I'm the associate pastor at the Endeavor Church in Forney. I'm also T's best friend, even though sometimes he doesn't like to claim it. But, it is what it is. I'm really excited to be here, also really nervous. Like T said, I have a long history of depression, anxiety, and growing up in church is not something that's really ever talked about. I've been to church since I was 4. The first time I heard someone speak on depression in church was when I was 22. And it was the head pastor that I was interning for. And he really opened my eyes to some stuff. And when I finally came out with my depression, it kind of rocked everybody's world around me because I'm typically known as like the where was I at? Yeah, but everyone around me was just kind of surprised. My dad was surprised. So, I'm going to start off with talking about church statistics when it comes to talking about depression. It says only 12.5% of church leaders say mental illness is discussed openly and in a healthy way in their church. 49% of senior Protestant pastors say they rarely or never speak about mental illness from the pulpit. 21 million adults battle with depression, and 1.9 million children battle with depression. Anxiety is the most common mental illness in America, with 40 million people, and only 36.9% get treated. And those are just people who've reported, who've been diagnosed. And the sad thing is, it doesn't change when it comes to the church. The statistics stay the same. So, for whatever reason in church, and thankfully y'all belong to a church that doesn't have a problem with this, but there's a stigma that we're not supposed to talk about mental illness, depression, suicide, whatever it may be in church, and I'm gonna do all that today. Yes, depression is real, it's a serious issue, and we're gonna talk about it, okay? So there's 2 major types of depression. There's physical depression, and this is something that everybody can get. An example would be like bipolar. There's type 1 where you have manic highs, doing crazy stuff that you wouldn't normally do, spend a bunch of money, have inappropriate conversations, do all of these different things. And then there's manic lows, the low depression. So bipolar is not something where I feel like people on TV and stuff use it these days where it's like their mood just changes a lot. That's not how it is. You have your manic highs, manic lows. There's type 2 bipolar disorder, which is what I have. And for whatever reason, you have a lot of depression, and then if you're not depressed, it's kind of like, I'm all right. There's never really anything else other than those 2, okay? There's also postpartum depression, all right? After giving birth, women's estrogen levels and everything suddenly drops. They don't know why they're depressed. Their husbands don't know why they're depressed, and it's just this crazy time, but there's nothing that they can do. It's just something that's physically going on inside of them. There's seasonal affective disorder, which is they call the winter blues. It comes from lack of vitamin D, not getting in the sun. Alaska is really known for this because in the winter they have 2 months of complete darkness. Now what we're going to be talking about today is situational depression. Anybody can suffer from this. It's because unlike physical depression where it's an inward stimulus, situational depression is an outward stimulus. So things that can cause it, like loss of a job, breakup, lose someone in your life, anything that's going on in your life outside of you that can cause depression. Now, I'm about to make everybody really uncomfortable, but I need you guys to trust me. Can you do that? Okay, I know you don't know me, but I need you to trust me. If anybody in here has ever had any type of depression that we just talked about, or something else I didn't mention, at any point in their life, whether it was just a couple days, whether it's a lifetime struggle, whether they're going through it currently, can you please stand up and stay standing up, please? Okay, take a minute, look around the room. Okay. If you are still sitting and you've known someone who struggled with depression in their life, can you please stand up? Okay. I want to use this as an example to show this is something that's really needed. And for those who are going through something in this, you're not alone. You're not the only one having these feelings. Look, if you look around you, see how many other people. I'd say about 90% of the room is standing up. So go ahead and take a seat. So we're going to be in 1 Kings 19 today, and I'm going to give some context. At this time, Ahab is the king of Israel, and his wife is Jezebel, who's a Philistine woman who has convinced him to worship the nature god named Baal. I know some people say Baal, majority people, but I say Baal. So I know that drives T crazy, but I'm going to be saying Baal a lot, okay? At this time, Elisha is the only prophet of the Lord, and there's a famine in the land that Elijah has announced. And he told Ahab to meet him at Mount Carmel and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah. Okay, and that's where we're going to pick up in 1 Kings 18, and they should put it up behind me. And I'm about to read a lot of verses, so stick with me. This is going to take a minute. So Ahab sent a messenger among all the sons of Israel and brought the prophets to gather at Mount Carmel. Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you hesitate between two options? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, follow him." But the people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Now let them gather two oxen and let them choose one for themselves and cut it up and place it on the wood, but put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other ox and lay it on the wood, and I will not put fire under it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And God, who answers by fire, he is God. And all the people said, that is a good idea. I don't know why that makes me laugh every time. That was a good idea. So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one ox for yourselves and prepare it first, for you are many, and I will call on the name of you and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. Then he took the ox which was given them, and they prepared it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered. And they leaped about the altar which they made. It came about noon, and Elisha mocked them, saying, call out with a loud voice, for he is a god. Either is occupied or gone aside or is on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and needs to be awakened. So they cried with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their customs with swords and lances until blood gushed out from them. When midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, but there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. And then Elijah said to all the people, come near me. So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. Elisha took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom which the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. So with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Then he arranged the wood and cut the ox into pieces and laid it on the wood. And he said, fill the 4 pitchers with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. And he did it a third time. The water flowed around the altar, and the water began to float around the altar, and he also filled the trench with water. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and I have done all the things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. When the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, the Lord, he is God, the Lord, he is God. Then Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal, do not let one of them escape. So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. Now Elijah said to Ahab, "Go up, eat and drink, for the sound of the roar of heavy shower." So Ahab went up to eat and drink, but Elijah went to the top of Carmel, and he crouched down to the earth, putting his face between his knees. He said to his servant, "Go up, look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There is nothing." And he said, "Go back 7 times. It came the 7th time that he said, "Behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea." And he said, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, so heavy shower does not stop you." In a little while, the sky grew black with clouds and winds, and there was a heavy shower, and Ahab rode towards Jezreel. Then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and outran Ahab to Jezreel. That was a lot. So, everything that just happened, we'll do a short summary and see what it said. So, he met all the prophets and said, "Okay, we're going to have 2 oxen. One you're going to offer as a sacrifice to your God. One I'm going to offer as a sacrifice to the Lord." And he let them go first. He let them choose the oxen, and they were sitting there all day shouting, "Take this, take this, take this." And nothing happened. And it got to the point where Elisha started teasing him a little bit. And I always picture in my head when I see this, him saying something like, "Maybe he's gone to the bathroom. You need to yell louder. He can't hear you with the door closed." And he's yelling at them. They start cutting themselves. Nothing's working. Then Elisha goes, and he's really confident. He's like, "I'm so confident that the Lord's going to do this, I'm going to dump water on it." 3 times. He's really, really confident in what the Lord's going to do. He called upon the Lord. Fire came down, took everything, dried up all the water. Everything was gone. And then after that, he killed all 950 of them, all the prophets. Okay? And then after that, he called an end to a drought. And on top of that, he outran a chariot that Ahab was on. He was running at super speed. He's like the Flash, taking off. And at this moment, it seems like he is on top of the world. Nothing can happen to him. He's on top of the world. That's a lot. Within a short 12-hour span, that's a lot that he just did in the name of the Lord. But let's continue to read. And this time it's short. It's only 5 verses. Now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a message to Elisha saying, "So may the gods do to me and even more if I do not make your life as one of them by tomorrow at this time." And he was afraid and arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. And he said, "It is enough now, O Lord, take my life, so I'm no better than my father's." All it took was this one moment to turn his world upside down. He went from being on top of the world to suicidal. And a lot of times that can happen to us so easy. It just takes one thing to flip our world upside down and puts us into a deep depression. And we start to seclude and separate ourselves, like Pastor T was talking about last week with isolation. And we sit there and linger on whatever our thoughts might be. And that's when it becomes dangerous, because when we can't handle the pain and the emptiness that we're feeling on the inside, we tend to try to fill it with other things that won't sustain us. And we all have these different vices. For some people, it's sex. For others, it could be drugs. For me, for a long time, I used weed to try to cope with my depression. For some people, it's alcohol. For others, it's porn. It's anything to get rid of whatever feeling that we're feeling at that moment. And then all of a sudden, we're stuck in this cycle. And that's where addictions can come from. Because when we feel that pain, the only way we know to cope with it is with that feeling. And it's not sustaining us. It's just taking the pain away momentarily. And then for some of us, what happens is like Elisha, we become suicidal. Here's some more statistics for you. 2/3 of those who commit suicide struggle with depression. So it's a lifetime struggle or a long period of time struggle. It's not just a segment. The risk of suicide is about 20 times greater among those diagnosed with major depression and compared to those without major depression. So When I was in, I'm gonna sit down. When I was in middle school, I tried committing suicide one time by pills. It didn't work. It didn't work. So 2019 was probably one of the lowest years of my life. I played football for 18 years of my life, and 2019 is when it ended. I had a CFL contract set up. I was getting ready to leave. A couple days before I was supposed to leave, I got hurt, and that ended my football career. And then I was going to get into a advanced master's program for a seminary in Washington State, which is where I'm from. And like a week before it was supposed to start, I got a call saying, "Hey, how old are you?" And I'm like, I think I was 22, 23 at the time. And they said, "Well, you have to be 25 to be a part of this program." And I was like, "But I'm already signed up. I selected my classes. School, it starts in a week." It was, I think they called me on a Friday. It was supposed to start Monday. And they're like, "I'm sorry, we can't let you in." So that crushed me. And then my mom's mom died, my grandma on my mom's side. And I wasn't particularly close with her, but for whatever reason, that really impacted me in a way that I never thought really possible. And then I was planning on my next step. I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Alaska. There's this low-income school and church that needs help with a sports program, getting it started for the kids. And this is a really dark area of Alaska. The school, all of the kids there were physically abused, and about 95% were sexually abused. And so I was going to go up there, start a sports program, and about 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave, my pastor calls me to his house. He's like, "Hey, come to my house after work." I said, "Okay." And he told me he got a call from the head pastor up there and was wondering how to tell me that they had a meeting the night before and they had to do some budget cuts and a bunch of different stuff. And so then I wasn't able to go. At the same time, I also went through a really bad breakup, worst breakup I've ever gone through. And so there was just a lot going on. And like I said, my whole life I've struggled with just regular depression. But then when all of this extra outward stimulus stuff, I've had at the same time situational depression with all these different things. And I felt so hopeless and lost. And I worked at the UPS store at this time. And this pastor in the area I knew came up to me and he's like, "Hey, how you doing? I've noticed you look kind of different." And I was like, honestly, I've just been really depressed lately. I'll never forget what he said. He looked me in my eyes and he said, "If you just had more faith in God, you wouldn't be depressed." And that killed me. For the next week, I'd go home, and I was staying with my dad at the time, and I'd pretend like I was okay, and I'd sit there, wait for everybody to go to bed, and I'd go and I lay down, and it felt like someone was like grabbing my stomach and twisting it. And so I'd go to lay down, and it would be like this, and I'm just like, and I'd sit here like this, breathing heavy, and I'd stay up all night crying. I didn't sleep for like a week, and the whole time I was thinking, if I just had more faith in God, I wouldn't be depressed. If I had more faith in God, I wouldn't be depressed. And that just kept playing in my head over and over and over. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I lost like 15 pounds in a week, and no one had the slightest idea. And I remember one day sitting in my truck with a gun in my hand, ready to pull the trigger. And right before I did, it was like God reminded me who I was in Him. Okay? So if you ever feel like you're at that point, remember, God loves you. And if you feel like nobody around you loves you, I promise you, you have multiple pastors here who would love to sit and talk with you and love on you and share truth with you. And don't fall into the devil's lies. A false gospel is a big part of killing Christianity today. So I forgot my backpack for my illustration, and so I'm borrowing Jordan's backpack, okay? So it's a little small. Purse, sorry. Sit this here. So picture this. A man gets on an airplane, and the flight attendant says, "Here is your parachute. You put this thing on, looks great, doesn't it? Oh yeah, baby. Everybody, your life is going to be great. You're not going to struggle anymore. This will make your flight amazing. You'll be so much more comfortable. This backpack or purse will make your life amazing." And so as he's walking to his seat with his backpack, thinking he's all that in a bag of chips, he steps on someone's foot, and he yells at him. He's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And he goes to his seat, sits down. Imagine this backpack's bigger. And he sits down, and he can't sit back all the way. It's really uncomfortable. And he's trying to put his seatbelt on, but the bag's causing his belly to get in the way, so he has to ask for one of them extenders, which is really embarrassing as someone who has to do it. And he's sitting there, and they come around, ask him if he wants some coffee, and he puts the thing down, but again, his stomach's in the way because he's hunched forward, and he's just really uncomfortable. People are pointing and laughing at him. And then the coffee spills on him, and he loses his mind, and he gets up, and he's like, you know what, I'm done with this backpack. Set it down gently, it's Jordan's. I'm done with this backpack. You told me it would make my flight great. It would make it a lot better, but all it's done is make it way worse. I don't want it. Get out of my face. You lied to me. Another man gets handed the same thing, but it's told him, hey, you want to hold on to that, because at 30,000 feet, this plane is going down, and that's the only thing that can save your life. So he's walking with it, holding on to it. People are looking at him like, why is he holding on to that? He doesn't care. He doesn't notice. He's just so focused on this bag. He sits down, and with every bit of turbulence, he squeezes and holds on tighter and tighter. And at one moment, he looks up and wishes everybody else around him had it too, because he knows at 30,000 feet, this plane's going down. That's the difference between a false gospel and the true gospel of Jesus. If any pastor or anybody tries to tell you that being Christian will make your life better, you won't be sick, you'll get more money, yada, 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 all of this different stuff, they're lying to you. And that is killing Christianity, because when that doesn't happen, all of a sudden people want nothing to do with Jesus anymore, because all they were filled with was false lies, promises, and hopes. So now we're going to flip to Matthew 26, and we're going to look at Jesus. Okay, so before crucifixion, let's name some miracles that Jesus did. Go ahead. Water and a wine. Feeding 5,000. Huh? Okay. Blind man. Anything else? He's casting out demons, made a lame man walk, brought Lazarus back from the dead. Jesus was doing a lot of cool things at the time. Okay? So where we're at now is him and his disciples have come into Jerusalem. People are cheering, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed are thee who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And a couple days later, he's sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's where we're going to pick up. Matthew 26, verse 36. Then Jesus came to them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and distressed. And he said to them, my soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here with me and keep watch with me. And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as my will, but as yours. And he came to the disciples, found them sleeping, and said to Peter, so you men could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not enter temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, my Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink, your will be done. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes are heavy. And he left them again and went and prayed a third time again, saying the same thing once more. So I want to start off by saying I am not making the claim Jesus was depressed. I can't make that claim. But we can see that he was going through some sort of emotional battle. There was something going on. He was in this deep battle to the point where Luke says the fact that Jesus was praying and he started sweating blood. And this can actually be explained medically. So Jesus was suffered from, I've practiced this so many times, hematidrosis, however you say it, which is a condition in which the capillary blood vessels that feed the sweat glands rupture, causing them to exclude blood. It occurs under conditions of extreme physical or emotional distress. So Jesus was so emotionally distressed about something, his blood vessels popped in his head, which caused him to sweat blood. Okay. My point in showing this is that even Jesus, God in flesh, could struggle emotionally. We're not alone in this. I also want to show when you're struggling with depression, it's not the fact that you're depressed, but it's how you respond in those moments. So one of the things that frustrates me a lot is when someone who's been depressed or, is moved past that tries to tell you the one way, like, hey, this is how you fix it. You do this, you'll no longer be depressed. So that brings me to my wife. So what I'm about to say, I'm probably, I guarantee, I don't want to say I guarantee, but I'm sure no pastor you've ever heard, or very few pastors have used this word from the pulpit. I'm going to say it once, just to show the severity of what it is, okay? And I have my wife's permission on this, but when my wife was in college, she was raped, okay? And from that, it caused obviously a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of these different things, okay? And because of that, for her, it causes Satan puts a bunch of lies in her head. And so what she has to do is she has to feed those lies with truth, scripture. And so when we first got married, this happened, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But when we first got married, and I would talk about being depressed, she's like, well, you just have to feed the lies with truth. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't need to feed any, me personally, because my depression is a physical depression, I don't have lies in the back of my head, other than the story I shared earlier. I just feel depressed all the time. That's just my mental state. But for her, she has all of these thoughts. And so she would try to tell me what I needed to do to fix my depression, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I didn't understand the difference between us two. It took time to understand, and I think she's starting to understand, or understands, like, that's not what I need, and I need to do a lot better at doing what she needs, of filling her with truth of Scripture, and help fight against Satan's lies. But there isn't a one-size-fits-all to deal with depression. Some people, again, another hot topic church issue, but some people need medication, period. I don't care. I take medication. I need to be better at taking my medication. I need medication. For some people, your body, your brain, chemicals, you need antidepressants to help balance everything out. And it frustrates me. It frustrates me because someone will come to church and say, I got cancer. And we wouldn't tell them, well, no, you can't get chemo. Somebody will come in and they had a heart attack or have high blood pressure. We wouldn't say, well, you can't take blood pressure medication. That doesn't make any sense. But for whatever reason, when we're talking about depression and anxiety, mental illness, which is a real thing, again, just about everybody stood up, we tell them you can't take anything. That frustrates me. If you need to take some sort of something for your depression, it is okay, all right? Some people need therapy. I'm going to change that. All people need therapy. We all need it. We all okay. But it is okay to be in therapy. Some people need to have words of affirmation to replace negative thoughts, like my wife does. But just because one of those things work for some doesn't mean that thing is going to work for for others. We have to make sure we understand that everybody's different. But what I will say is there are things that we can do that can and will help. And to do that, we just have to look at what Jesus did. Okay? Because there's some key differences between what Jesus did and what Elisha did. Okay? The first thing Jesus did is he opened up to his 3 closest disciples and said, hey, what were his exact words? My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. He opened up to his 3 close friends. Find the people in your life that you can go to and say, you know what, hey, I need some help. And again, if you don't have any, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people right here in the front row. Leaders of your church. One in the back there. I can't remember his name. Scott. Sorry. But there's people here, okay? The next thing he did, he asked them to pray for him and with him. There's a key difference in saying, hey, can you pray for me? And then going off and they pray for you. There's a difference when you ask them to pray for you in that moment. There's something powerful in that in prayer in groups. Okay? Corporate prayer. He also spent time with the Lord by himself and focused on the Lord rather than his situation. Okay? Now, will doing these things for sure cure your depression? No. Can they help? 100%. The point is, more times than not, it's what we're focusing on. Okay? A good illustration is Peter. As he's walking on the water and he's staring at Jesus, he's doing just fine. The second he takes his eyes off Jesus, starts focusing on the waves around him, that's when he begins to sink. Him looking at Jesus doesn't change the situation. He's still on the water. But the difference is where his focus is. When you focus on Jesus, that's where your joy comes from. Happiness comes and goes. Depression comes and goes. But true joy from the Lord does not come and go because the Lord never changes, even though our situations might. Okay? So when we were depressed and we feel like no one loves us, we have to remember that Christ does. Okay? The truth of the matter is our sinful nature has separated us from God. There's nothing we can say, do, give, money, whatever, in order to gain reconciliation with him. But God loved us so much, he sent his son to live a life we couldn't. And he was beaten, mocked, nailed to a cross for our sins because we cannot. Romans 10:9 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And when that happens, your focus point changes. So even though you have everything else going on around you, you have Jesus to look up to. It doesn't change what you got going on, but it gives you hope, peace, and reassurance that the other things that we talked about earlier, drugs, alcohol, money, porn, cannot give you. But Jesus can. So in this moment, I'm going to ask Zach and the worship team to come back up. I'm going to ask Pastor Richard, LaVonda, yes, I remembered, and Pastor T to come up here with me at the time of invitation. And I'm asking Miss LaVonda to come up for a specific reason. A lot of times, us as men don't understand that sometimes women don't feel comfortable talking to us. Up here, I believe personally that she represents a big part of the church. And so if there are women who want to come up but don't want to talk to a male, there's someone up here for you. Okay? So at this time, these are just steps, but we're using it as a moment, as an altar before the Lord. So if you're going through something, or you know someone who's going through something, grab their hand, bring them up here, pray for them. Sometimes people don't have the courage to come up. Grab somebody, pray for somebody, If you need prayer yourself, you want to talk more about Jesus, whatever it is, now's the time.